news of the Mets West Coast and I guess Midwest road trip. They go 5-1, taking 2 of 3 from the Diamondbacks and finishing a sweep of the Chicago White Sox. Welcome to the Queens Connection, episode number 37, a production of Patton Sports Creative. I am your host, Andrew Patton, joined by the co-host Corne Hogavine. We're coming to you after the Mets finished off the White Sox a 2-0 victory. So usually we record the next day, but scheduling and whatnot, we're coming to you right after a series sweep of the White Sox. So, Corne, despite you being 6 hours ahead of us and it almost being 11 o'clock p.m. your time, you look bright-eyed and bushy-tailed after that game.
Well, it's exactly what we wanted last week. It's exactly what we kind of hoped for, win the series in Arizona, and then hopefully do what you have to do in Chicago. It wasn't always easy, but eventually we got the job done. So yeah, I think we can be very pleased with how this week and how this full road trip. I would even add the Orioles series to it after some disappointing series before that. Um, we said that this is the make or break time. It doesn't necessarily add it up to make because the Braves have won their fair share of games as well. But it definitely didn't end up as a break for us. And it could have been, if you look at what we faced, Orioles, Padres, Diamondbacks, especially those three, it could have been a lot worse, but the Mets handled themselves really well.
Yeah, if you count those games against the Baltimore Orioles in New York before the Mets took off to add more frequent flyer miles to their credit cards or whatever what is it, usually the Capital One. It's like the frequent flyer miles. I don't know, something like that. But anyway, back to the original point. Me trying not to be funny anymore. The Mets went 9-4 in those games with the Orioles, Padres, Diamondbacks, and White Sox. Now, obviously, those 4 losses, they were either ugly or kind of heartbreaking. So those losses maybe did sting a little bit more. But when you look at the overall picture, and that's what we try to do here, 9-4 against uh, mostly playoff teams, you're going to take that any day of the week. Uh, so I mean, we can go to that Diamondback series like I mentioned at the top. 2 of 3 from the Diamondbacks. Obviously, if you it could have been a sweep. I won't say it was going to be a sweep because it was a 5-4 game when the Corbin Carroll grand slam happened. So anything could have happened in the ninth inning for the Diamondbacks, and that's a team that we've seen have these miraculous comebacks. Think about that one against the Washington Nationals. But back to the overall picture, 2 of 3 from the Diamondbacks. What was your overall takeaway from that series? It could be good, it could be, maybe something you're concerned about, maybe a little of both. When you look back in that series at Chase Field, what stood out to you the most?
I think what this team has showed, like you mentioned, you lose a pretty heartbreaking game on Wednesday when you have a 5-4 lead and Diaz just couldn't throw strikes, and then Corbin Carroll got him for that grand slam. You're gonna lose those type of games, but then the Mets did bounce back behind one of our two great lefties, I would say, in the rotation. Manaya and Peterson just did it again in that series. They both pitched really well. So yeah, besides the bouncing back, the getting that series win, I think was pretty important. Was a very very tight game on Thursday. I didn't watch that game. I still have to watch that eventually. I was planning on watching that tomorrow morning before we had our planned podcast, but obviously that changes now, so that I didn't watch it. So unfortunately, I can't really go that much in depth with the Thursday game. But the Monday game, I think we saw um, the Mets taking advantage of more defensive miscues. That's 6 hits in the fifth against Brandon Pfaadt and company. Um, I think probably 3 balls that Perdomo could have handled in that inning, so we got a little bit of help there. But still, the Mets put up a six spot, and winning the first game in a series, especially on the road against one of your rivals, is always big. So the Mets set the stage there. Wednesday, I mean, obviously wasn't great. I think it was also a little bit unfortunate when Severino got hit on the leg. After that, I think he wasn't as sharp. Immediately allowed that home run. Before that, I think he looked a lot better. So that's a little bit unfortunate. Then the Mets came back, 4-run inning in the fifth. So that's you add another run to get that lead after Severino allowed those 4 runs. So that also was a kind of like bounce back, so to speak, after being down 4 runs against a good ball club, the Mets didn't give in. So even in that game, you saw a bounce back. Unfortunately, it didn't end well, but it's still, uh, those outings happen. Your closer uh, was going through a rough stretch. Luckily, he bounced back too in a good way. So bouncing back, that was the point when I'm going to start with. And I also recapped a little bit of the Diamondback series all together, Andrew. So did it all for you.
Wow, thanks a lot. You're my savior. But no, I think you make a good point there about the response from the teams, from the team, and obviously, you mentioned Manaya. I know you haven't watched the Peterson start yet, but David Peterson just did David Peterson things. Not to be Mr. Spoiler there, but in a game too, where obviously it's a day game after a night game, and that night game was pretty heartbreaking. So you really got to put it in the back of your mind if you're a player. And David Peterson went out there and just, like I said, has done David Peterson things of late, just giving the Mets another solid start. And it's really him and Mania right now are it's that 1-2 punch, in this rotation. I know they're not back to back, so is it really a 1-2 punch? But you know what I'm getting at is with those guys, they are your lead rotation arms at the moment. We know Severino can be very good at times. Obviously his last 2 starts, maybe not at his I don't wanna say as best because he was good in San Diego until that 5th inning, and maybe it was a little bit of the same in that game against the Diamondbacks where he was good and he got drilled by that comebacker and then he kinda lost it a little bit. But if you look at the overall, box score is only, uh, 10 innings his last 2 starts. You'd like to see a little bit more. Obviously, some circumstances like the comebacker happen, uh, but to just have those guys, Peterson and Mania, to step up when you're down Paul Blackburn, and even Paul Blackburn's last start wasn't very good. Now you have Tyler McGill up, who gave you pitched into the 6th inning against the White Sox, but you still, at least for I don't want to say you still because I don't want to speak for you, but for me anyway, there's still not that level of trust in Tyler McGill. So you're down a guy in your rotation. You have to start someone who's been on the Syracuse Express this year, and then Jose Quintana. I mean, it's a crapshoot with him. You don't know what you're going to get production wise from him. Sometimes he could be really good, like he was in San Diego. Sometimes he could be really bad, like he was. What was that start? It was just in my mind, and now I lost it. But I guess you could pick any Quintana start from earlier in the year. He could be that guy too. Like the start against the Rays, like that one, or the A's. The A's, that's the one I was thinking of. They just came back. Rays, A's, it kind of rhymes, but anyway, just to see those two guys step up in this important stretch of the season is very encouraging um, for this ball club. And I'll give love to Brandon Nimmo too because he picked up 5 hits in that Diamondback series. That's a guy who's going to need to pick it up down this final month of the season. It'd be huge for this Mets lineup if he's able to get it going. So maybe some signs of life there from Brandon Nimmo. So that was my biggest takeaway, probably from that Diamondbacks series. Was there anything concerning on your part from that series? Or you're kind of like, oh, I don't know, this guy's maybe not at his best right now. Now at a critical time in the year, or any? Was there any thoughts like that at all that crept into your mind, or were you pretty Mr. Positive Corne?
Yeah, I think the only thing that was bothersome was the Diaz outing, where he just after he allowed that home run to Merrill Kelly on that Sunday loss with another bad outing and couldn't find the strike zone. uh, You started to think, oh no, this is the Edwin Diaz, we saw earlier in the year. But luckily, after it started on Thursday when he bounced back in that really close 3-2 win on the road is always a more difficult one to close down because even if you allow 2 runs, your team can't come back in the bottom of the inning. So to me, that was already a little bit of a turning point, and he followed it up with a solid series in Chicago. So to me, that was probably the only real concern I had after game 2. But luckily, I think as Arizona Diamondbacks, I would have a little bit of concern for Perdomo's defense. That's mostly how is how was Perdomo an all-star over Francisco Lindor last year? I
Took
just have to put it there. The guy doesn't look really good at that. Sorry,
took the words right out of
just
my
one
mouth. I was just going to
series.
bring that up.
Just one series, I know, but yeah.
Oh well. Well,
Oh well.
Francisco Lindor is on a case for or is on a MVP quest right now. So I guess we'll have to focus more on that than his lack of all-star appearances since being a member of the New York Mets. So we can transition from the desert to the Windy City, where the Mets had a weekend series with the Chicago White Sox, and like we mentioned, a nice three-game series sweep against a team that I mean, it's hard to say you should sweep a team in Major League Baseball, but there was kind of the expectation. I don't want to say expectation, but there was kind of the feeling that man, the Mets really need to sweep the White Sox in this series, and they did exactly that. I will say though, these last two games of the series, um, close ball games. Maybe Saturday was, it almost got ugly in that ninth inning with some base hits there. Today, as we're recording this right after they finished off the White Sox in a 2-0 win, you're going up against Garrett Crochet, and Garrett Crochet did Garrett Crochet things when in the three and a third, 3 2/3 he pitched today. But uh, so that's maybe to be a little bit expected with Garrett Crochet. Um, but the Mets, in the end, they did exactly what we wanted them to do, uh, taking this series from the White Sox. And I'll go first in for what stood out to me in this series. Jesse Winker. I mean, what a great pickup he's been for this team. I know maybe at first he was getting hits, but maybe they were just the singles, so he wasn't really driving the ball in the gap or anything like that. But uh, oh, he's been finding the gaps lately, and he's been finding the ball going over the wall a couple times as well, going back to back with Alonso the other night. So Jesse Winker, we know he's more of a he's in a platoon role here uh, with the Mets playing against right-handed pitching and whatnot. But when there's a right-hander on the mound, you gotta feel pretty good when Jesse Winker's penciled into the 5 spot or the 3 spot or wherever he is in the lineup. What a great pickup he's been by David Stearns.
Yeah, I will start a petition to bring back Jesse Winker this offseason. I don't think he will cost that much, and I think it works well with Winker, Marte, Nemo, Taylor, and maybe add one more outfielder. Maybe be let Drew Gilbert be promoted next year at some point. But I think you're pretty pleased with that 4 outfielders rounding out the outfield for next year. I would be, and I think with Marte, that you need a starting caliber player as well on the bench, or Marte a little bit more on the bench, whatever you see fits in how you're gonna work with that. But yeah, he's been tremendous. Great pickup. Like you said, started out a little bit iffy, but has found it. Been more aggressive, like the boot said, driving the ball a little bit more, taking a little bit less walks. But overall, he's red hot right now. Also, I think for Tyler McGill and Jose Quintana, they both not necessarily put any doubts away with their outings. Especially Quintana, I would say, with allowing like 9 base runners in 5 innings. But still, they did the job. I understand that it's a low scoring team that you face, but still, you have to do it. It wasn't overly um, dominant, as I would say, like Shamanaya did today. But obviously, Shamanaya is in a way different uh, part of his season. Way more confident guy on the mound than those two are. So McGill coming from AAA, making a start, 5 1/3 innings of 1 run ball, struck out 6. Used his two-seam fastball a lot more with his cutter/slider. Didn't see the splitter a ton, which was a successful pitch when he pitched well. So that surprised me a little bit, but the guy has to make some kind of adjustments on the fly. And I mentioned this earlier in this podcast. Uh, I'm not the biggest McGill fan. We know that, but I do root for a guy that really tries to alter, to adjust, and to find, hopefully, at some point, find his, go-to arsenal, like Manaya has done during this season as well, and last year too. Um, and Severino, we also mentioned Severino being a different pitcher at some insert versus certain teams. So I applaud that. I applaud the effort McGill put in there. Obviously, again, I will say it's not that I'm now screaming McGill and Quintana are saviors for this next month. Definitely not. It's definitely the Chicago White Sox, and we know that. We are aware. But still, they didn't falter, and Quintana got some big outs besides just not having it. He couldn't land his curveball at all. So, which is probably one of his main pitches. So, still, eventually, he got the job done. Although it wasn't pretty, he got the job done in the end. So, kudos for both those guys.
Yeah, obviously, with when it comes to McGill, we've I don't want to say we hammered home, to this point, but it's a guy that has talent. Obviously, he throws an upper 90s fastball. I mean, if you can throw that hard, you got some talent in you. He just hasn't been able to sustain it at the major league level. There was that stretch at the beginning of the 22 season, being a part of the combined no hitter, and really probably I'm going to get hurt like early mid May, something like that. And after that, he hasn't been that caliber pitcher. I mean, he had his moments. Um, Even this year, that start against the Dodgers was really good. It was his best outing of the season so far, and he had some really good ones towards the end of the 23 season as well. But mostly, what we've seen from McGill is a guy who can be erratic and it causes high pitch counts because he's walking guys, and it puts stress on your bullpen. So it's hard. It's just hard to believe that he's going to be I don't wanna say effective's, like, maybe not the right word, but maybe it is. Maybe it is the right word. It's just hard to put your trust in McGill as we enter the final 4-ish weeks of the season when every game is so crucial, and you could say the same thing about Quintana too. It's hard just from the majority of what we've seen this year, it's hard to believe that or it's hard to go into a game and feel comfortable knowing that you're with those guys in the mound and thinking, well, are we going to get a good start or going to get a bad start compared to when Shaman Naya takes the mound or David Peterson or Luis Severino, where you feel like, okay, I feel like we can expect at least 6 innings from these guys and they're going to keep us in the ball game. It's just hard to feel that same way about those latter two guys in the rotation.
Yeah, definitely. I would say with Tyler McGill is that I'm not necessarily a big believer in year to year struggles in runners in scoring position. We had that talk about Pete Alonso. I think this year, for example, it's definitely in my estimated guess. It's not going to happen next year. It didn't happen years before that. So sometimes you have a over the top bad or good year in runs and scoring position. There are guys who do that sustainable being that good, but for McGill's sake, I would say I do expect that those runners in scoring position are so bad if you consider his overall or in other situations that at some point I have to expect that that will even out a little bit, which makes him a, a far better pitcher and obviously less runs given up. But I also want to say is that I don't know how many option years McGill has, because if they are um, almost done with his option years, I think it's a very very difficult decision to keep McGill on your roster for a full season. So hopefully he has a good September, and I hope he has an option year left to prove himself. I'm not sure at the top of my head. It's just a thought that came up. But if he does, I think he's very useful to have because you need depth. We know that. Um, but if he's out of options next year, it's a different story. You probably hope to trade him. Probably.
We don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole, but I was honestly thinking the same thing the other night when he got this started. What do you do with Tyler McGill if you were the New York Mets? We've talked about the possibility of maybe they would transition him to a reliever. Maybe like we talked that's more of an off-season thing than an in-season thing. Um, but the problem is, if you move him out of a starting role, then you lose some pitching depth. And as we know, when it comes to finding pitching depth, guys that take minor league deals in free agency that are starters, there's not really a whole lot of guys that do that because starters are so valuable. They don't want to take minor league deals. They want those major league contracts and whatnot. So it's hard to find free agent minor league or free agent pitchers to take minor league deals who are starters. That's when you kind of have to trade. When you do a trade, like we look at the Padres with Juan Soto. They brought all these guys, all these pitchers back from the Yankees. Vasquez, obviously Michael King's a part of their rotation. They originally had Drew Thorpe, who they then moved to the White Sox for Dylan Cease. But the point I'm trying to make is that's why you see a lot of pitchers traded, like in those kinds of deals, because teams want as much pitching depth as they can. Because, like I said, there's starters don't take minor league deals in free agency. So if the Mets did do that with McGill, if they moved into the bullpen, it's gonna be hard to find that depth. I mean, they have internal options, but how close are those guys going to be with some of the years they've had at the higher levels of the minor leagues?
Yeah, that's exactly. We always do. Or at least I do. I point my finger when I want to respond. But that's exactly what I wanted to say. We, I think, mostly those depth arms have to come out of your own system because of that reason, because of the options. Not all the minor league guys that sign minor league deals have options to move back and forth. So, in a perfect world, those spots are for um, your McGill's, your Butos earlier on this year, but he's now a reliever and doing well there. So that's a discussion the Mets should have during the off season. But that actually is for Peterson had that job earlier on. A guy that was optioned, that was up, down, up, down, up, down. So at some point you probably are need to make a decision what is Tyler McGill for you, and you hope that a guy like Dominic Hamill, a guy like Mike Fassel, etc., will be those guys to fill in that role at first. But yeah, all those three guys can add Tidwell too. Have struggled. Maybe Joan Suarez will do well in AAA. Guy I like, who is a Rule 5 He has to be protected for the Rule 5, so we could lose him. So that's an interesting call too. What the Mets are going to do with Joander Suarez? Maybe that's a guy who's going to be on the 40-man roster and be a guy that can be depth for you at a certain point next year.
And something else to point out about the topic of pitchers signing minor league deals who are starters. If you do get that, a lot. I mean, just look at what Julio Teheran did this year. A lot of these guys are going to come to camp on that minor league deal, but if they don't make the major league roster, they can opt out and go to a team that needs a starting pitcher, like the Mets did when they needed Julio Teheran to make that start against the Atlanta Braves. So, I mean, even if you sign a guy, that there's probably going to be that clause in there, and if they're not on the team come opening day, then they're probably going to be elsewhere. So, um, starting pitching depth, like you said, it has to be internal and some guys maybe the Mets were expecting to take a step in these upper levels, particularly AAA, haven't necessarily done that. So it makes it an interesting topic for the offseason. What do you do with McGill and Buto?
Definitely, we have some talks to do during the off season, so
We'll have
we
faith.
lo- we like that time for this kind of discussions. We were early with this one, maybe we didn't stay to the script, I would say, but oh well,
You
we
never
got
know.
that out of the way.
And to bring this full circle, let's go back to the guy that we talked about this that we kicked off this part of the show with Jesse Winker. In his 27 games with the Mets, he's hitting 333 with a 354 on base. So that there's Exhibit A right there. What you talked about, he's not maybe walking as much, but the slug is 480. He's got an 834 OPS since joining the Mets. So I know they gave up Tyler Stewart, who pitched a really good game recently in the national system. Uh,
He's
but
doing well.
I'm pretty happy with. I think this has been a nice trade for both sides at the moment. So
Yeah, yeah, I think as Mets, I think honestly all the trades so far and a lot of minor league waiver claims and minor league additions have panned out well. Obviously, not all. That's never happened. That you have some signings that don't work. You can't be perfect. No GM is that. But if you look at Danny Young, a pickup we had, if you look at the trades, I know Brasaban has struggled, but what you gave up was just so little that I wouldn't really, second guess that trade. Same with Ryan Stanek for Ryan Thomas, who I know you liked, but I think for the future of a Mets team, I think Ryan Thomas probably has a tough uh, road to being a really, a future part of the Mets, at least for a big part. So even the guys that didn't work out, I think the trades were solid, and the Jesse Winker is probably the biggest thing we gave up. But luckily, he's done really well, so that makes giving up Tyler Stewart, who also falls in that Rylan Thomas category for a guy that probably has a little bit more of a difficult path to the majors with the Mets, especially with how Cohen spends. Um, but yeah, in the end, can be mad with that deal.
no, and obviously, like you mentioned, I like Rylan Thomas, but I also acknowledge the fact that the role Rylan Thomas would have at the major league level is probably the fourth outfielder role. So if you're willing, well, you can part ways with that for a need, a guy who's going to fill a need in the moment. So obviously, I like the prospect, but to see him move on for a more essential need at this time, you totally understand the move. Obviously, we've been high on some guys in this podcast. We've been maybe a little low on some guys in this podcast, but there are two guys, at least on my mind right now, that I don't want to say I'm uncomfortable with, but I've seen some things the past couple games, and I'm kind of like, maybe they're kind of I don't want to say falling apart, but they're hitting a rough stretch at the wrong time of the year. And unfortunately, they're two key important guys, Francisco Alvarez, and you might not like this one, but to me, Buto has not been as sharp as he was of late. We can start with Buto since I mentioned him, and I'm sure you're going to get fired up and have some good quips to come back. But his last 7 outings, so this goes back to that Oakland series, the beginning of that Oakland series. He's pitched to a 4.82 ERA, 9 in the third innings. He has 10 hits, 9 walks, 7 strikeouts, so more walks than strikeouts. Obviously, the 5 runs in there. The WHIP is what stands out to me right now at 2.04. For a guy who's pitching some important innings for this team, and I know he got the save the other day against the White Sox, but it did get a little dicey at times. I mean, I personally didn't watch the game, but I was following along my phone, and the White Sox got some base runners, and I believe did they have the tying or the winning run at the plate uh, late in that with 2 outs in the ninth.
Uh,
It was either tying or winning. It was an important run at the plate for sure.
I think
Uh,
it was. I think they had 2 men on when. If so, I think the winning one. Yeah, it got dicey. Yeah,
but obviously, we've talked about him and how important he has been for that bullpen, and he was really good when he transitioned to that role. And we mentioned it is difficult for an in-season transition like that, so you wonder if maybe he's hitting a little bit of a wall in with that. But these last couple outings, I've been a little uneasy, perhaps, with Buto in the game, just because he looks like his command is off. The changeup that's really his bread and butter has been up in the zone a little bit more than we'd like to see at times, and gets through for base hits. So, do you think there's legitimate concerns about Buto right now, or do you think this is just kind of a whole lot of nothing?
it's a whole lot of nothing. It's
I,
seven
I
games. I mean,
expected nothing less from you.
yeah, but we're talking about 7 games. I think we are smart enough to know that guys are gonna go through these kind of stretches during a long season. Buto is going through that stretch right now. It's up to him to and even I know the WHIP is very high, but even a 4.85 or something ERA over 7 games in your bad stretch in the bullpen. I mean, there are guys who have a 5.110 season ERA pitching in relief for some teams. So uh, it's a stretch. We know that at times Buto can lose his control a little bit. He has that period right now. Um, so I'm not overly concerned, and that's not because I'm a Buto lover. I would do that with a lot of other guys on a 7 game sample size, um, and I also think it's a little bit unfair to. I mean, he was so good. We knew that he's not gonna be so good for the whole year. That would have been crazy. So it's not unexpected that he's gonna have a rough patch. The other guy, though, that you're gonna mention, um, I'll let you do the talking there.
Well, it's the other guy I mentioned, Francisco Alvarez, and it's just been really, really rough, especially post All-Star break for Francisco Alvarez. The last 30 games, 91 at bats. He's hitting 154, a 189 on base, a 242 slugging, and even his defense a little bit of late, particularly the pass balls. And I'm like I said, I don't want to go down rabbit holes and whatnot, but the pass balls thing, I think we could have a very interesting discussion about. But we'll table that for the time being. If we want to get into it, no, maybe we can. But overall, for instance, yeah, look at what time is it over there? Oh, it's getting kind of late. But anyway, get back on track here. It's something you mentioned in the chat today was you said I believe the quote or the message said I would start Luis Torrens more often there, I said. And obviously, it seems like, at least for Torrens' sake, I don't want to say the numbers offensively have been the same, but Torrens has not been great at the plate lately. But we know what Torrens can give you defensively. And now we're at a critical point in the season where if we can gun guys down, if they can gun guys down on the base pass, that's huge. Unfortunately, Alvarez hasn't been sharp in that category of late, and Torrens has been amazing at it since he's gotten here. So, what is the level of concern of Francisco Alvarez? Is it possible he can get back on track? We hope that walk-off home run against Baltimore was that start, and unfortunately it wasn't. But are you willing to give him the chance to try to get back on track, or do you have to weigh the other option and of Torrens is so good defensively, we might need to value that more with him than Francisco Alvarez. So what do you do basically for Francisco Alvarez's sake?
Right now, I would go 50-50 with both of those guys, and that's not the case right now. Mostly, Perez plays maybe once or twice a week. Uh, I would say twice at most. I don't want Francisco Alvarez to sit on the bench. That's definitely not my intention. And Francisco Alvarez is too big of a part of your future. He still is. The guy's just 22 years old. Um, you still, after last year when he hit like 22 or 23 home runs, and there's talent in the guy. He's a good defender. Just he's just mightily struggling right now. 30 games is pretty hefty sample size right now, where it just didn't hit. Even I think just after he came back, he hit well, but overall, the numbers are creeping more and more down and down. So, and Luis Torrens um, has a tougher job. Uh, I mean, he's not playing much. I don't expect guys who don't play much to be a big offensive force. And so, right now, even now, I think looking at what Alvarez is doing and what Torrens is doing, I think Torrens just takes better at bats right now. And if we are a team that's out of it, I would have a completely different um, opinion. But right now, I think you play the better player, and I think we can't deny that it's Luis Torrens. Unfortunately, no, not unfortunately, but the the truth still is that Francisco Alvarez is too big of a part of your future that you won't sit him. He's not going to be the backup, and that's not the like I said, not the intention. But Alvarez, I think I think we all know that the slider is giving him fits, a lot of fits right now, and he needs to adjust to that. And maybe a little less playing time takes a little bit of pressure off Francisco Alvarez, and still getting enough playing time to work on that. That's the perfect world, and I think 50-50 will work fine with that.
It's something that also sticks out. We talked about the pass balls. We don't need to get into that discussion unless you're feeling up for it. But last year, 108 games behind the plate. He caught 873 two-thirds innings, 8 pass balls. This year, he's caught 75 games behind the plate. Those numbers also include coming in late in games like he did today in the ninth inning. Uh, 566 in the third innings, caught 8 pass balls. So uh, less games, less innings, same number of pass balls. So that's very concerning. I have my theories on that and whatnot, and uh, but we don't need we can table that maybe as an off season thing, or something down the line. When it's not not almost midnight your time and you want to go to bed and whatnot. So we can table
I
that
have a
for
lot
another
of
day.
minor league. I have a week worth of minor league stuff, almost a week worth. So
Exactly. So we'll wrap up the White Sox series by saying very good, exactly what we wanted the Mets to do. Some positive signs in that. And now they're coming home to take on the other Sox team. That'd be the Boston Red Sox, who have about probably 50 something more wins than the White Sox do. So a little bit of a different Sox team we're going to be facing here, or they're going to be facing here. We're not facing them. We're just watching the games. But you know what I'm saying. Anyway, like you
it's
said,
us, Andrew. It's us.
it's us. I don't know. Anyway, like you said, you got a lot of minor league information to share with us, and so I think this is the perfect time to hand it over to you to share that info.
Disclaimer first. Obviously, with us recording earlier, I didn't. Didn't add the Sunday games, so that will be our next podcast when I add those. And I went a little bit different. I went game to game per minor league team instead of trying to figure out in a whole week where I set certain player at a certain point. I just went to Tuesday, Wednesday, etc., etc. So St. Lucie, Carson Bench going oppo for his first home run on Tuesday. He went 2 for 4 in a St. Lucie 4-2 win. Davison Gutierrez also made his St. Lucie debut and doubled in his first at bat. What a tremendous year for Gutierrez and good to see him in St. Lucie. I watched that game, so I watched Carson Bench's first pro home run, something I can hopefully remember. Watch Edgar Moreta start, little sidearm righty who tried to throw a lot, to throw inside a lot. He threw some cutters, one that went out for a home run and showed a nice breaking ball at times. Do believe he needs more against lefties to stay as a starter. Doesn't have an off-speed pitch that goes well versus lefty. He was impressive though in the sixth after some control issues, loaded the bases with one out but got a K and a ground out and kept a 1-run lead. He went 6 innings, allowing 2 runs over on 4 hits with 7 strikeouts. The bullpen was solid with Lionel Alvarez getting his first St. Lucie save. Carson Bench didn't stop as he went 3 for 4 with another first inning 2-run homer on Wednesday, driving in 3 in a win. Ali Serrano went 2 for 4 with an RBI, and A.J. Ewing kept his great sets going, driving in 2. Joel Diaz allowed 9 hits, but just 3 runs, 2 earned over 6 innings of work. He didn't walk anyone and struck out 4. Carson Bench had himself a week. He had another 3 for 4, 2 RBI day in a Thursday loss. Franklin Gomez went 2 allowed 2 runs over 4 innings of work, striking out 4. 2024 10th round pick Brandon Gitron struck out the side. He was followed by 7th round pick Will Watson, who struck out 2 over his debut inning. And Christopher Gomez went 2 1/3 scoreless in relief, striking out 4 in that Thursday loss. Eddie Serrano, with his second home run of the year, helped St. Lucie with a win on Friday. The pitching was tremendous without allowing an earned run. Saul Garcia allowed the only run, which was unearned over 2, striking out 3. Cal Crick went 2, striking out 2. Wellington Aracena struck out 6 over 3 perfect. And Juan Arnaud was even better, striking out every batter he faced over 2, kind of like how Garrett Crochet started today. 17 total strikeouts for the St. Lucie Mets in a 2-1 win. Congrats to Corey Collins and Nick Rosselli with their first pro home run. The Mets 6th round pick Collins went 2 for 4, driving in 3, and the Mets 11th round pick Rosselli went 2 for 4 with 2 RBIs. 4th rounder Ali Serrano also had 2 hits in a 2 for 5 day with a triple. Marco Farkas walked 3 times in the leadoff spot. Unfortunately, besides that great offense, the defense and pitching weren't good. St. Lucie made 6 errors and allowed 11 runs, but just 7 earned in a 11-9 Saturday loss. Moving on to Brooklyn. Cyclones won on Tuesday, 3-2 behind a strong outing from Felipe de la Cruz. He went 5 innings of 1-run ball and 3 hits and 2 walks with 3 strikeouts. Eduardo Herrera struck out 4 over 1 2/3 perfect frames. Christopher Serrero went 2 for 4 with 2 doubles and an RBI in the win. DeAndre Schmidt had a great day on Wednesday in a Wednesday win, going 3 for 4 with a double and an RBI and 3 runs scored. Junior Tillian drove in 3 of the 6 runs. Zach Thornton was awesome over 5 scores, allowed just 4 hits, no walks, and 3 strikeouts. Jeffrey De Los Santos homered for the 6th time this year in a 2 for 3 day in a Thursday's loss. Jonathan went 4, allowing 4 runs. Gregory Luis, the lefty, who had a very strong year, pitched 2 more scoring innings. And I have to add Jonathan, congratulations, because he was moved up to Double A. William Lugo went 3 for 5 with a home run and a double. 4 runs scored and 2 runs batted in a Cyclones win on Friday. Omar de Los Santos went 3 for 4 with a triple. Austin Trozer allowed 2 runs over 2 1/3 innings, but the bullpen was tremendous, highlighted by Luis Moreno, who went 4 scoreless innings with 5 strikeouts. And Nick Burrito hit his third with the Cyclones, going 2 for 4 with 2 RBIs. Jack Wanneker was solid, allowing just one earned run over 4 and a third innings, striking out 5. But like St. Lucie on Saturday, Brooklyn also had a bad defensive game, which resulted in some unearned runs in a 9-8 loss on Saturday. Binghamton, Ryan Clifford hit his 15th since joining the Rumble Ponies on Tuesday in the 3-2 win. Clifford drove in 2. Jordan Gerber went 6 strong, allowing 2 runs on 5 hits. A walk-off loss on Wednesday as Wilkin Ramos blew the save. Jeremiah Jackson went yard for the 16th time this season, going 2 for 4 with 2 RBIs. The Rumble ponies pulled a strong start from Jonathan Pintaro, who worked around 10 base runners, allowing just 2 runs over 5 and 2/3 innings of work. The Binghamton Rumble ponies lost on Thursday and Friday without anything notable to mention. So we're going to go through Saturday when Ryan Clifford and Alex Ramirez had good days. Clifford went 4 for 5 with a double and 2 RBIs. And Ramirez went 3 for 5 with an RBI. Matt Rudick also homered. Unfortunately, Nolan McLean couldn't make his third straight good start as he allowed 5 runs over 3 and 2/3 innings. The bullpen did well, but unfortunately lost after 10 innings. Shukata lost in the 10th, allowing 2 runs over 2 and a third innings of work, striking out 5. Syracuse, Luis Angel Acuna had himself a day in a Tuesday's loss. He went 4 for 5 with his 7th home run, driving in 3. He also made a sparkling play at short. Yolmer Sanchez also homered. However, Brandon Sproat cruised through the first 4 but hit a wall in the 5th, ending with 4 runs over 4 and 2/3 innings of work, striking out 5. We have seen this with Brandon Sproat in his AAA work so far. Good for some innings, but then bad for one. After a great Tuesday, Acuna had another good day on Wednesday with a 2 for 5 day with an RBI. The Ritter had the same day as Syracuse won 3-2. Another Tidwell start that had a lot of base runners. Tidwell allowed 6 hits and 3 walks, but allowed just 2 runs over 4, striking out 4. The bullpen was tremendous with 5 hitless innings. Krennic went 2, Gage, Fujinami, and Orsi 1. Every reliever struck out 2 besides Orsi, who struck out 1. Logan Porter had a grand slam and Drew Gilbert another home run to help Syracuse to a 12-7 win, and that will be on Thursday. Yolmer Sanchez drove in 3 in the win, collecting 2 hits. Mike Fassel was thrown over 6 innings of 2-run balls, showing his ability to go fairly deep into games. Yohanes Suarez went 4 innings of 4-run ball in his AAA debut. He struck out 4 in the loss. Justin Jarvis struck out 5 over 3 scoreless in the loss on Friday. And Luis Angel Acuna went 3 for 5 with a triple, and Pablo Reyes, Carlos Cortez, and Luke Ritter homer. Reyes has joined the Mets as an extra man with a 8.67 AAA OPS. Unfortunately, Dominic Hamill had another bad outing, allowing 6 over 3 and 2/3 in a Saturday's loss. It was a long time, but we got it. We got it through, Andrew.
And I'm glad you mentioned the Pablo Reyes thing because that's what I was gonna bring up. That now the rosters have expanded. Pablo Reyes is the extra position player for the Mets, while Alex Young, who was very good in his stint in the Mets bullpen earlier this year, is back up as well. And for people who are upset that it's not Luis Angel Acuna up with the Mets, I think go see what the manager said, and that's the reason why he's not here. There's not at bats to be had at the major league level at the moment for Luis Angel Acuna. It does not do him any good to do what Pablo Reyes did today and just pinch run late in the game. It's more important for Acuna to play every day down at Syracuse, and maybe at the end of the year when the AAA season's over, then maybe they will do a swap and Acuna will come up just to get some exposure to the big league club. But for right now, it's better for Luis Angel Acuna to play 9 innings compared to half an inning of baseball. So that's my thing on that.
That's why, yeah, that's why managers' explanation are sometimes very important because, for example, the Friday game when they brought in Diaz in the 9th inning, Mendoza said Diaz was already hot, so why not use him? He will probably not been available because he uh, was warmed up on Saturday anyway. So why don't we use him? That's exactly right. Unfortunately, at first I thought I would have liked to see Brazoban, but then he explained it, and I thought that's a good point. If he was that warmed up, get him in there if he wasn't available anyways on Saturday. So it's good to hear what the manager says. And Mendoza is, in my opinion, a very good manager in explaining his moves and explaining the reasoning behind it. So for everybody who freaks out at some point for decisions that's being made, listen to what Carlos Mendoza has said. So good point on you, Andrew, because you started.
Well, you talk about warming up, and this NL wild card race is starting to warm up as well with the Diamondbacks taking a couple losses against the Dodgers. The Padres lost to the Rays. They're currently playing. They lost to the Rays on Saturday. They're currently playing as we speak right now. Actually, that's now gone final. The Padres won 4-3. So the Padres did not lose today. They won. But the Cubs have been winning of late. They're right behind the Mets, and obviously the Braves and Phillies. They're Sunday night baseball, so that game has not gone. It's not started yet as we're recording this. So the Mets are a game and a half behind the Atlanta Braves, and when this comes out Monday morning, the Mets are either going to be one game behind Atlanta or back to two games behind Atlanta. But things are tightening up in front and behind the Mets in that regard because like I said, the Cubs have been playing some good baseball of late. So the Cubbies are trying to make a last minute push here to get that final wild card spot, and the only way to hold the Cubs back or to catch the Braves is to win ball games. And it's gonna be a little bit of a tough ask for the Mets to do this as they welcome the Red Sox to Citi Field. And it's a three-game series beginning on Labor Day, so everyone's got the day off, which will be nice. So if you're going to the game, don't go when I get there because I want there to be as least amount of traffic as possible going there because I know everyone who left the city to go spend the weekend elsewhere is going to be coming back on the Labor Day. So hold off your arrival times till later so we can get to the ballpark uh, in time, to say the least. But it's going to be a good pitching matchup on Monday as Luis Severino will take the mound for the Mets going up against Brian Bayo with the Boston Red Sox, who's coming off a very good start. Tuesday is maybe the most intriguing pitching matchup, in my opinion. It's going to be Cutter Crawford going for the Boston Red Sox, David Peterson on the mound for the New York Mets. I should mention all of these games are 7:10 first pitches. And the series finale on Wednesday be a tough one for the Mets as they have to go up against Tanner Houck, who's been the Red Sox best pitcher all year. And the Mets will pitch Tyler McGill on Wednesday as Paul Blackburn, I believe they said, is scheduled to pitch a rehab game on Tuesday. So obviously Paul Blackburn can't pitch Tuesday in Syracuse and then pitch Wednesday for the Mets. That can't do that. So McGill gets another start here for the Mets. Now, with that being said, they're two teams that are in similar positions. They're the first team out in their respective wild card races. The Sox are a little bit further behind in their race compared to the Mets. But needless to say, these are very important games for both these teams. So everyone's got to be on their A game, especially on the Mets side if they want to catch the Braves, like we mentioned, and keep the Cubs back. So in order to do that, they're going to need some guys to have a big series. And we're going to put a name to the claim, as I like to say, with our player of the series predictions. I believe the last time we did it, you got the pitcher and I got the batter. So now we will reverse it. And since we are a pitching podcast, I get to go first. I'm going to take the low hanging fruit, as I usually do. But David Peterson has been spectacular for the Mets pretty much all year, I would say. I feel pretty comfortable saying that. And like I said, it's probably the most intriguing pitching matchup on Tuesday with Cutter Crawford and David Peterson on the mound. So I'm going to go with David Peterson to put together another quality start for the New York Mets against a decent Boston lineup, especially with Rafi Devers and Jared Duran, some all stars on that in that lineup. So let's go with David Peterson to do what he's been doing of late and hold opposing teams to maybe 3 or 2 runs at best.
Well, first I want to say it's not only an intriguing matchup for the Mets and the Red Sox too, but it's an intriguing matchup for a fantasy battle too, because you have David Peterson and Luis Severino, and I have Carter Crawford and Tanner Houck in my team, and we face each other. Hopefully, we are tied. because then you lost.
No,
Uh, then we are back to where it belongs,
no,
I would say.
no.
But yeah, honestly, I hope and I truly hope that you get the best of that matchup,
So do
and
I.
then I just still beat you eventually.
Unlikely.
Like, I have more chips in my team. Tarek Kubel, for example, Sean Manaya, obviously being on a roll. But that first, I thought that was funny that in our matchup this week, I have two Red Sox pitchers, you have two Mets pitchers, because all you do is pick up Mets pitchers.
It's not true.
Uh, yeah,
Only the good ones. Not
only the
rostering
good one.
Jose Quintana or Tyler McGill.
No, no, that's true. Oh well, but I have to pick a hitter. I'm gonna pick a guy who's also in my fantasy team because I do have some Mets hitters in my fantasy team. I have MVP Francisco Lindor. I have Monk Vientos, but I'm going with Jeff McNeil. Uh, he's gonna play all three games, three right-handed pitchers. So that's, I think Quadra Crawford is right-handed, right?
He is
Yeah,
indeed.
yeah, yeah. So three right-handed pitchers. He will be in there, um, and we need Jeff McNeil to have a good series. Besides all those, a little bit adding some depth in the lineup, getting some production from down in the order, which might be needed with some guys struggling down there. Let me say it lightly. We need McNeil to have a good series in the bottom of the order for the Mets.
I like the pick, and it's a good point on your end. He's probably going to play all three games. Probably, hell, probably play three different positions too. And start a different position in all three of those games. You never know with how they're going to manipulate the lineup, especially with flexibility in the outfield and whatnot. So, but good pick. I think good picks on both our ends there, and I like how the 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 pre-production meeting, quote unquote, we talk about, well, we'll try to keep this close, tight knit, you're tired, and all that good stuff. We're already going to be pushing close to an hour. What a surprise!
Shocking.
Shock.
We just like talking baseball, Andrew. That's why we do this. That's the main reason why we do this. So uh, it's a way that we also take some time to talk an hour baseball, so to speak.
Exactly. Well, I think that with that being said, it's time to wrap things up. So, first off, we will thank you for staying up past your bedtime and hanging out with us and talking about these last six games and the next three that are ahead of the Mets. So, thank you, Mr. Hogeveen, for also blessing us with your minor league information as well. So, we greatly appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Andrew. It's not sarcastic at all, but thank
All
you.
right, everyone. And before we wrap up, I should say we have a drawing going on for three tickets to the Mets Nationals game on September 17th. So we're going to do the drawing for that in our post Red Sox series recap. I believe that's going to be on Friday, at least for the time being. If it changes, we'll let you know. But we will definitely post the winner on Facebook and Twitter as well. And the only way to enter is to go to our Facebook or Twitter and leave a comment why we should pick you. And also, we have to like or follow the page in order to be qualified to win the ticket. So make sure you go do that and make sure to like and subscribe wherever you're listening on Spotify or YouTube. So thank you so much for listening. We greatly appreciate it and enjoy these next three games against the Boston Red Sox. We will talk to you before a weekend 3-game series with the Cincinnati Reds.